My name's Jane Kilcher, and I'm working with Emily Rydell on her dredge up in Nome. I love being on the dredge, and we're getting gold. I'll definitely have gold fever.
What happens when the dream you gave everything to, your career, your marriage, your identity, starts to quietly fall apart, and the cameras are still rolling? She never expected the cameras to expose everything, or that a simple question would crack what looked unbreakable. Right from the start, there's a gap. Behind the hardy exterior lies a story full of unspoken truths. What if everything you believed about Jane and Atz Lee wasn't the whole picture? Before she stepped onto the rugged cliffs or hauled fish from icy currents, Jane Kilcher carried a different kind of weight, and not just the tools of survival. When she met Atz Lee again after years apart, something unspoken sparked between them. It felt destined, but what nobody expected was how those sparks would cast shadows later. Want to know what happened next? Keep watching, because the truth takes an unexpected turn. Jane grew up as a nurse, facing crises that demanded every ounce of calm she had. She swapped sterile halls for frigid creeks, and after her first marriage ended, the wilderness offered a kind of reset. Meanwhile, Atz Lee, born May 22nd, 1977, in Homer, Alaska, was already deeply rooted in a world most of us only glimpse on screen. A third-generation homesteader, he hunted, fished, and built with an ease that came from decades of family lessons. And yes, he even pursued music, performing songs his father composed that captured the raw beauty of their homeland. Their reunion felt like something from a storybook. Two people shaped by hardship, drawn together by shared history and healing potential. When they married in 2006, they stitched their families together. Jane brought her daughter Piper and Atz Lee his son Etienne. Soon, TV cameras captured not just their work on the land, but their bond, a powerful duo navigating love, survival, and parenting, all under the scrutiny of a growing audience. But that smile for the camera hid more than revealed. The Discovery Channel noticed something real and rare in the Kilchers. With 11 seasons and 176 episodes airing from December 29th, 2011 to November 13th, 2022, Alaska, the last frontier, wove a narrative of generational resilience. Jane appeared quietly at first, then her strength, humor, and protective instincts made her unforgettable. While Atz Lee gathered fish and hauled lumber, Jane watched shadows. She made sure their kids remained unseen, guarded from the glare of public life, even as the world cheered them on. That contrast, hard work intertwined with tender defense of her children, became part of Jane's unspoken heroism. Viewers saw her battling freezing water and hauling gear with unwavering resolve, her sharp wit breaking the silence of the wild. But that story had another layer, one not shown on screen, the quiet strain beneath each smile and every season. 2015 delivered a shock. Hiking near Otter Cove, Atz Lee slipped, plummeting nearly 40 feet. A medevac helicopter rushed him to the hospital with a shattered arm, broken shoulder, fractured ankle, a hip injury, 2 collapsed lungs, and more than a dozen broken ribs. The images shocked fans, and so did the aftermath. It wasn't scripted drama. It was real danger, and Jane shared raw updates, posting x-rays and wrenching honesty. Every bone was fractured, every recovery step painful. But the story she told about strength and gratitude was only part of it. Because what nobody saw was how the accident rattled the family center, how it shifted balance in ways the cameras didn't catch. Fast forward to July 2023. The announcement fell quietly on Facebook. Jane's marriage had ended. She wrote, "Atz Lee is divorcing me. I feel like I'm losing my best friend, even as they emphasize respect and mutuality." That contrast, loss and respect, sent ripples through their fan base. Suddenly everyone wondered, what fractured behind the scenes? Rumors floated. Some outlets pointed to long simmering tensions, communication breakdowns, traveling strains, or perhaps something more painful. Others whispered about financial stress or unspoken emotional distance. Here's what's clear. After nearly 2 decades together, including 10 to 17 years of marriage, the separation hit hard. Fans asked, could love grounded in shared hardship still unravel? And yet, amidst the uncertainty, Jane showed herself again, now not just a tough homesteader, but a woman grappling with endings and new beginnings. She shared grief for Willow, her longtime dog, whose loss this spring shook her deeply. That same quiet strength that protected her kids and steadied the family during Atz's recovery is now steering her through emotional terrain. Viewers are watching a transformation unfold, and they're hooked. Every season of their story plunged them into cold, isolation, survival. But now the setting isn't physical, it's emotional. What kept them together before doesn't necessarily hold them now. Hooked yet? You should be. This chapter is only just beginning. So far, we've traced their paths. Jane, the nurse-turned homesteader who traded hospitals for wilderness. Atz Lee, the third-generation frontiersman who almost lost himself to a fall. The acclaim of years on discovery. The protective love for their children. And most recently, the unraveling of a partnership built on mutual respect. But the story isn't over. What's coming next? How do they divide homestead life and kid responsibilities? Did Atz Lee's music and outgoing nature clash with Jane's cautious, protective instincts? What shifts when fame, ambition, and exhaustion collide with vows made years ago in a remote Alaskan valley? Your next cliffhanger is here. The emotional fallout, the family logistics, and the hidden rifts. In part 2, we'll dig into what triggered the breakup, how social media blew their private cracks into public spectacle, and what insiders say really happened in those final months. You'll hear directly from Jane's posts and maybe find answers in new legal filings or financial patterns unseen by casual fans. A year after that near-fatal fall, Atz Lee reflected on his recovery, saying it has been hard, but I can't complain, all things considered. I still have my health, family, and friends, and that is a blessing. But what the cameras didn't catch was the shift beneath the surface. Suddenly, the man Jane had married emerged changed, distant, quieter, as though haunted by unseen scars. And that transformation began to unravel everything. Jane never left his side. She held the homestead together, raising Piper, keeping supplies stocked, cooking, fishing, and kept their daily rhythm from collapsing. She flashed a reassuring smile on screen and cracked jokes about life in the cold, but off camera, she was carrying the weight alone. Imagine feeling your partner slip away, even while you're side by side every single day. That's exactly what she faced, and it changed everything. Hooked yet? You should be, because here's where the story deepens. Atz Lee retreated more and more into the wilderness, disappearing for days to work on a cabin he built far from the main homestead. He said it grounded him, gave him peace. But the harder he worked, the wider the emotional distance grew. Jane tried to push into that silence, but each time she reached, he slipped further into solitude. Meanwhile, their children were growing up fast. HN was stepping off to college, and Piper, entering her teens, made it clear she wanted no part of cameras or public exposure. That left Jane feeling stranded, like she was holding the family together by herself. The show went on, but fans began to sense a shift. Jane's spark, once fierce and bright, seemed to flicker. Her social media posts focused on fishing trips, nature's beauty, and her kids. Barely a mention of her marriage. Comments poured in, people offering support, urging her to speak up, but she kept it tight, responding briefly and kindly. Meanwhile, Atz Lee appeared in fewer scenes each season, working on his private cabins and seeming more at ease in isolation. He was still there in frame, but not really there. What's intriguing is that no dramatic scene marked the downfall. Instead, it was a slow, steady fade. One moment your partner's in survival, the next you're strangers living separate lives under one roof. They tried counseling and long conversations, according to sources close to the family. But they were pulling in different directions. She needed unity. He needed solitude. Every night he blanketed himself in memories of the accident. Every time she asked for help, she felt the walls tighten. Ask yourself, how many times can you reach into silence before the silence reaches back? Jane kept working, kept showing up for the show, the kids, and the land. But even the strongest can buckle under invisible strain. And season after season, the emotional gravity became too strong. Even on camera, the change was palpable. They still worked together occasionally, but the warmth had gone. Their smiles looked polite rather than joyful. It wasn't one massive argument on screen. It was a quiet tension that lingered between them, a sense that neither was living the same life anymore, even though they shared the same space. And then in 2023, Jane posted the news that confirmed what everyone had felt for months. Here we go. Atz Lee is divorcing me, and it is very unfortunate. Lost my best friend, and it hurts. The words cut deeper than any cliffside fall. They signal the end of a partnership built on survival, love, and shared dreams. That moment froze their fans. After years of watching them face storms together, suddenly it was different. Jane's tone remained respectful, protective, especially when trolls targeted her or her daughter. She shut them down gently but firmly. Leave my kids alone. My girl isn't and hasn't been part reality TV. She never turned heartbreak into a spectacle. No public tantrums. No blame laid at his door. Instead, she held boundaries, shielded her children, and publicly chose dignity when it would have been easier to lash out. That choice said more about her than any dramatic confession ever could. Still want more? Because here's where curiosity really builds. What really broke them wasn't a single event. It was the erosion of connection. The fall triggered PTSD and trauma in Atz Lee. The recovery forced Jane into the role of caretaker, provider, anchor. Slowly, he began building walls. She began carrying the burden alone. Two people living separate lives beneath one roof. By the time separation came, it felt inevitable, not shocking but deeply saddening. Their marriage unraveled in silence, like a fraying rope too worn to hold. The homestead continued. Life went on for Piper and Etienne, but the heart at its center had shifted, and Jane stepped forward stronger, bearing her own grief with grace. She didn't vanish into the wilderness after a heartbreak. She leaned into it. As whispers of doubt swirled, Jane returned to her greatest solace. Fishing, this time not for show, but for peace. Fans noticed a change. The bright family snapshots faded, replaced by quiet boat rides and candid moments of solitude. And that was the first hint that Jane wasn't settling. She was rebuilding. The comments poured in, empathy and support flooding her feed, and she replied with simple gratitude, shielding her children, and even urging trolls to stop targeting Atz Lee. Even separated, she defended him. That wasn't obligation, it was grace. What came next would make you wonder how someone could walk away with such dignity, yet feel so empowered. She didn't just let go, she bloomed. The days after their split were silent, filled with introspection and cold Alaskan air. She didn't vanish from public life entirely, but she didn't return either. In those weeks, she found clarity. Then, almost imperceptibly, she began posting again, fleeting glimpses of dawn on the water, laughter with Piper, reflections on nature's healing power. Her humor back then hadn't died. It was simply waiting. Watch how she transformed. I don't need a man. I just need fish and peace and a few close people who get me. That line made fans lean in. It was funny, honest, defiant. It cut through the usual post-divorce noise. It was Jane, unfiltered. She embraced the woman she was before fame. The nurse, the fisherman, the friend, the Alaskan who could wade into freezing currents and still laugh through the storm. With each image and caption, she began to heal, softly, steadily, without fanfare. Her relationship with Piper grew deeper and more meaningful. They hiked, cooked, shared laughter and tears, but always together, strong. Jane's voice shifted from survival to growth, and her audience followed eagerly. Etienne, though mostly out of frame at college, remained connected. A photo here, a supportive comment there, a family still together in spirit. Their off-camera bond reminded viewers. Family isn't a race with separation, it evolves. Despite persistent curiosity, Jane never returned to the homestead. She acknowledged it fondly, saying, "Life shaped me, but I outgrew it, and that's okay." She spoke openly about mental health and burnout, empowering women who had stayed too long in situations that cost more than they gained. She offered solidarity, not resentment. Her followers admired her strength. Finally, a narrative of quiet departure and courageous reinvention. Jane surrounded herself with lifelong friends, cherished moments by the sea, and a resilient calm. Each fishing trip echoed her past, yet felt entirely her own. She didn't chase headlines or dramatic confessions. She focused on reclaiming herself, and in doing so, she inadvertently inspired others. Now her story stands as proof. Rebuilding can be beautiful, Even after the end, amid this transformation, her financial and lifestyle evolution stands out. With an estimated net worth around $2 million from her fishing business and show contracts, and projections suggesting growth to $7 million through 2025, Jane has leveraged her platform smartly. She hasn't been flashy, no private jets or luxury cars yet, but glimpses of a modest SUV, a classic Rolex from her grandmother, and a cozy waterfront cabin hint at steady, grounded wealth. She's reinvesting in her mental and financial health, expanding fishing tours, stockpiling insurance on her equipment and business ventures, and quietly holding stakes in Alaska-based tourism. The lesson she offers: stability comes through thoughtful reinvention, not grandeur. Meanwhile, Atz Lee remains committed to the homestead, maintaining property, livestock, and music. He's launched a YouTube channel, sharing cabin-building videos and occasional tunes. No hints of new relationships, but clear focus on solitude and craftsmanship. His path mirrors his roots. Consistent, rugged, introspective. Piper, now at Western Washington University's Catchumuck Swim Club and graduating in 2026, lives quietly, away from social media. Though Jane shares proud moments here and there, HN's occasional Instagram updates about fishing and music suggest a young man navigating his heritage in his own way. Both remain connected to the land and their identity, even as they carve independent futures. The change wasn't sudden. It crept in like the tide, slow and quiet, until everything familiar was underwater. After the divorce, Jane didn't make any big announcements. No grand farewell to the homestead. She simply shifted, day by day, post by post. Fans began noticing a new rhythm in her life. Less survival, more serenity. Her world had gotten smaller, yes, but also deeper. Where once there were bustling homestead scenes, now there were still mornings on the water, the echo of loons across the lake, and the gentle hush of snow falling on her cabin's roof. But beneath that calm was a woman reckoning with a decade's worth of effort. Marriage, parenting, filming, all now behind her. She didn't pretend it hadn't hurt. That would have been easier, maybe, but not honest. Instead, she chose truth, offered in glimpses. One evening, she shared a photo of the moonlight cutting across a quiet inlet and wrote, "It's not what I planned, but it's peaceful. And sometimes peace is more valuable than plans." That caption alone said everything. Jane was no longer trying to hold up something broken. She was building something new, and this time it was just for her. While some viewers clung to the past, asking if a reunion with Atz Lee was possible, Jane never indulged a fantasy. She replied politely but made her boundaries clear. That chapter had closed, not with bitterness, but with the understanding that healing sometimes means moving away from what once defined you. She had spent years being one half of a team. Now, she was learning how to be whole on her own. Meanwhile, Atz Lee stayed consistent, if distant. His videos showed him hauling timber, crafting intricate wooden structures, and tinkering with old instruments. His presence online was sparse, but when he did share, it was grounded in a quiet authenticity. He rarely spoke about Jane or the divorce, offering only a vague acknowledgement that life had changed, but that's how it goes. And that was it. No drama, just silence, hard work, and the rhythm of the land. Fans continued to speculate. Of course, that's the nature of reality television. Once you're in people's living rooms, they feel entitled to the story's ending. But Jane never owed them more than what she chose to give. And what she gave was something rare. An honest portrayal of what it looks like to lose someone and still choose to love your life. She kept fishing, kept laughing with Piper, and kept reminding her followers that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, "I'm still here." One of the most poignant shifts came when Jane started mentoring younger women in the outdoor community. She began speaking more openly about what it meant to carve out a place for yourself in a space that often expects you to shrink. "Don't disappear, make others comfortable," she wrote in one caption. "You can take up space and still be kind." That message resonated deeply, especially with those who had watched her evolution from supporting character to leading her own story. Even her silence spoke volumes. When Piper was accepted into a college she dreamed of, Jane simply posted a heart emoji and a photo of the two of them hugging. No long caption, no explanation, just pride. That restraint, That grace became her signature. She no longer needed to prove anything. Her life was no longer for show. And ironically, that's when she became more compelling than ever. Their story shows that a family doesn't end with divorce. It shifts. For Jane, the boldest move wasn't leaving the marriage. It was choosing herself without bitterness. She walked away not with fanfare, but with quiet certainty.